What's up, Purist? It's Bob from Purist Motorsports. Recently, I got to go visit a private collection of Fox Saleens and Mustangs. There were, well, there was more than just Fox Saleens. There's SM95, S550s in that collection, but one in particular that did footage of that I'm still learning about. And, well, I just thought it would be best to get one of the creators, builders, and engineers behind the car into a conversation. Luckily, the person is very good friends with Mark Lamaskin and good friends with a couple of guys that own the cars that I know. So I was able to actually get Dave Eber, one of the full-time employees of the SAAC Cars, back in 91, 92, and 93, I believe, to talk about the Shelby American Automotive Club cars that they built. This one's really unique. It's a convertible, and it's one of 62 total built. That includes prototypes, according to Dave. And before I get into the conversation with Dave, let's just do some footage of the car. Enjoy. So the whole point of getting this together is I recently went to a collection, private collection, and there was a convertible there. And I thought it best to bring Mark in the conversation, and then who else other than one of the creators of the SAAC cars, Dave Eber. Dave, thanks for making time for us today. And it's kind of cool. I've never met you in person, but I know we were at the same show last fall, but I never could track you down. I mean, feel free to introduce yourself. I don't know that everybody knows exactly, who you are, but
yeah, I mean, obviously my name is Dave Eber. I was involved with the SAAC cars. That was my first job out of college. I was 2.5 weeks out of college when that program started. So I was there for most of it.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, that's pretty nuts. And I know that Mark has talked about his time and those cars coming out. And I guess that Mark, you mentioned it before, the timely release of the cars, and it kind of hit when a recession started. And then that was a challenging to get everything off the ground. I'm sure, Dave, you may be able to speak to that. But the big thing is there's a red convertible, number 17, that I kind of want us to discuss for the YouTube channel, which this is what this will be on. So, but Dave, how many cars are there on that side of the things, the convertibles? What's kind of the breakdown?
In total, including prototypes, everything, we built 62 of them. Convertibles, including one prototype, there were 12 altogether. So there were 11 production convertibles and one prototype.
Okay. And these are unique cars in that, I mean, it's not just wheels and brakes. Like, you all had some choice pieces of hardware on it. I mean, Borla exhaust, 3-piece, what is that, Simmons wheels.
Yep, from Australia.
And I mean, feel free to take over. What other pieces did, that was done to the cars?
I mean, we did pretty much everything. I mean, we pulled the motors out of all of them. They all got the GT40 heads, intake, headers, all that kind of stuff. Put the 4-wheel disc brakes on, converted them over to 5-lug. We removed things like the fog lights and put brake cooling ducts in the front. All the interiors were custom. We had put roll bars in the hatchbacks and the light bar in the convertibles. We got rid of the fake scoops on the side and came up with pieces for that to kind of clean the side of the car up. Changed taillights, shocks, springs, pretty much everything. Mechanically, fuel, everything from the fuel pump to everything. I think the radiators were stock, stuff like that, but that's really about it. We changed as much as we could.
Yeah, it's definitely a car with what was it? What was the horsepower rating on it? What it ended up being 293?
295.
295. I think it was close to 300. I couldn't remember the exact number. But I mean, that's for its day is a runner. Like, to get something at a dealer that was with a warranty, because you all used the GT40 intake. This is before
right.
93 Cobra production. 1991 was when
towards
you all
the end of 91 were the first ones. Yeah.
They were very exotic parts back in the day. I remember when the cars were introduced and we'd walk over and look at it and you're like, wow, because you'd never even seen the parts before, much less seen them on a car. And Dave and the crew managed to, use all those parts. And it was really not just the fact that the car was so good looking, and originally it was actually named a Shelby, was the fact that it had all these crazy parts on it that nobody had seen before. So it was the full spectrum of coolness.
Yeah, but on the GT40 intake was kind of very unique, and I guess in a sense space age, with all the individual runners, and of course you all had custom plaques made for that, custom valve covers made for the car, and then of course Coney shocks, struts, Borla exhaust. I mean, it's you could almost go equal to, as far as name brands, like the 2000R model, because they use multiple manufacturers to complete that car.
Right.
But y'all, you went through like testing with Ford, and that was a whole process, right?
We had to provide a car to the EPA. There was a car with the full engine and suspension package on it was at the EPA they had that car for about a year and ran it through all sorts of tests, emissions tests and whatnot.
Cool. I mean, you also had like ergonomics to it too. The interior was upgraded as well, right?
Correct. The door panels, the seats, even the center, the armrest on the center console, we redid those. Little things like the shift boot was real leather now, and mats and all that kind of stuff.
With the seats, though, it was like a factory Ford seat, but it was recovered in the leather with the logos, right?
Correct. And then later on, we offered a Recaro seat option towards the end, and we built a handful of cars with Recaros in it.
And then that's something too to discuss. Like, I know there's a Mark I and a Mark II car. And the car that we're talking about in this video is a Mark II car, and that's actually
correct
on the roll bar with the thing. But what's the major difference between Mark I and Mark II?
Mark I's were it was similar to like a 65 Shelby. All the 65 Shelbys were white with blue stripes. They weren't convertibles, anything like that. So we kind of followed in those footsteps. So the Mark I they were all white hatchbacks, no convertibles, and they were only available to current members of the Shelby American Automobile Club when they were first produced. So once we kind of got through that, we introduced the Mark II, which is mechanically, it's identical to the Mark I. But you could get the car in a convertible, and colors. So we offered up to the white, black, and red.
Okay. Okay.
So
Now,
the interior was a little different, but other than that, they were mechanically the same.
okay. Okay. And then wasn't there I did an article on one, it's the SAAC Snake, right?
Correct. And that was just more of, we were trying to just get a less expensive car. So it had all the looks of the Mark I and the Mark II, but none of the engine modifications. So it still had the suspension and wheels, and the interior was optional. So if you didn't want that, you didn't have to get it. So we just tried to make the car a little more affordable.
And do you know the production breakdown on how many like red convertibles were made, or out of that Mark II?
Yeah, including the prototype, there were 8 red convertibles, 3 black ones, and we did 1 white one.
Okay. Any idea where the prototype is now, or what?
It's still with the family that actually bought it from us when we were done with it. I think they're in New York, and I think it's been passed on to someone else in the family, but I believe they still own it.
Okay. Okay. And is there any difference in prototype versus the regular production?
Not really. No, it was really, the prototype was used for like developing the different stripes that we needed for the trunk lid and, you know, the spoiler, and different interior, and that was used for all the magazines and stuff like that. And it was pretty much a press car.
Okay. Mark, you know, you and Dave have like a previous, y'all have known each other for quite some time.
Long time. He had hair and mine was brown. Long time. We've been friends for a very, very long time.
So, were y'all like talking back when he was doing this for the SAAC cars, or how did y'all meet? I guess is the best thing to ask.
Through the Shelby Club.
Okay.
His dad was instrumental in the Shelby Club, and you know, we were the 2 young guys that were there, so we naturally bonded and became friends. You know, now all those guys are elderly or unfortunately have passed, and we were the young ones. So, you know, granted, you know, we sort of gravitated toward each other and became friends, and then stayed friends for, I mean, I don't even know how long. I mean, years.
Well, it's probably been 30, 35 years. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. And Dave ended up at one point going to work for a guy that I work for because he was looking for somebody. And I said, hey, talk to Dave. And I mean, it's just, you know, this whole Kevin Bacon thing. And that's how we met his wife. And, you know, it's just crazy. And Dave is one of those people that I might not talk to for a year or 2 years. And I pick the phone up and it's like I talked to him 5 minutes ago. Yeah. And same thing with his brother and his whole family. They're just amazing people.
Awesome. But so, I mean, the Shelby Club, was that before the SAAC cars and all that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Then?
Yeah, it was an idea they had. And remember what I said, they were originally called a Shelby, and Dave can get into that with the problems with calling it a Shelby. And then there was also what was called the Late Model Mustang Club that they started, and Dave was, you know, had started doing stuff with that because both his father and Rick Kopech saw that these guys were going to get older and wanted to continue on with what SAAC had become, and wanted to try to figure out a way to meld it into the younger group. And that might have been one of the ideas of creating this car, is creating another group of Shelby enthusiasts that weren't in there at that point, 40s, 50s, and 60s, you know? Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave.
No, it was, yeah, pretty much. And at that point, I guess the original idea came from, at the point where they started thinking about these cars, I guess the original Shelbys and Cobras were, you know, they were about 25 years old and starting to become collectible, and people were starting to drive them less and less. And, you know, everybody felt like we needed a modern version of it, something you could drive every day if you wanted to.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you used to show up at the Shelby convention, there were guys driving everything. And then as the years went on, less and less cars were showing up, because now all of a sudden the car was worth, you know, 75,000, 100,000, 150,000. And these guys were afraid to take them out. While before, you'd pull into the parking lot where the SAAC convention was being held, and there's a real Cobra sitting in a parking space. It was a car. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a special car, but it was owned by maybe different people. Maybe when the market really took off, they started getting sold to people that weren't enthusiasts like the SAAC people, and or they were afraid to bring it out in public.
That makes sense. There's a lot of, it seems like every generation has that, we're seeing similar trends now where guys are either trailering, Foxes to shows because of their rarity and value, as opposed to driving them long distance. Well, let's be honest, like the Fox Sports Day at that time was good.
Yeah. You don't necessarily want to drive one right now that far. Yeah.
No, what they built was, in essence, what Ford really is in the last 5 years is kind of, the started with the Shelby reintroduction in, the early to mid 2000s. And then it's gone into your GT350R and then GT500. I mean, they're really offering, as far as the GT350R is, that's a beast of a car for a Mustang. You
got to look at it from this standpoint. The car that Dave and the guys built was basically like a 93 Cobra, but 2 years early. It had disc brakes. It had the GT40 motor in it. It was emission certified. It was a much better looking car in my opinion than a Cobra. But so you also had the OEM reliability. It wasn't something that wasn't made to last. And you could easily drive one of those cars 100,000+ miles. And, disc brakes, the really, really nice Simmons wheels. It was really a first-class car. But it was also, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, it was like $39,000 for the original ones.
Yeah, $39,900. It was expensive.
And, that was big money back then. That was like, 911 Porsche money. And how many were the first original ones that were able to be ordered by club members? It was 20, 25 or 26. What was the number?
30.
It was 30. Okay. And then you had to be a member in good standing of the club, and you could order the car, and you could pick your number as long as it fell within a certain amount of numbers, correct?
Correct.
Yep. And then they debuted it. Which event was they debuted at? I remember being there, but I don't remember which one it was.
It was the Charlotte Shelby Convention. It was the National Convention in Charlotte.
Yep. And very much like when Steve, debuted the SA10 and delivered them to their owners. But no, it was amazing. You walk around, look at this car, and it was so well put together, so complete, and had the blessing of the club and, the Shelby name on it. How could it not be an ultimate collectible car that you could actually get in and drive with fuel injection? It stopped. It had, Goodyear tires on it. It had a great Borla sounding exhaust. It was the ultimate package back in that day.
That's that's why I was saying earlier, it's kind of the equivalent of the GT350R now. Better brakes, better suspension, higher quality, lighter three-piece wheels. It's an all-around better performer. And it took it. What I guess my all moment is, it took a group of people outside of Ford to get it done. Whereas today, Ford is like, oh, well, we can do that on our own. Sort of. And I think, I don't know how it transitioned to 93 Cobra at what point, but, that's, to me, is like Ford realized what you all were doing, and they probably were like, we could probably do the same thing within Ford.
Well, there were key Ford people, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, that were involved in everything that made a lot of it possible, because Dave Wagner, and who else was involved with Ford?
Lee Morris at SVO, the whole SVO group, they were instrumental. Without those guys, this never would have happened. So everybody, Ford, everybody at Ford was on board, and they were excited about it, because it, like I said, it never would have happened without their help.
And it was almost like the push to, that created the SVT group at this point, because I would think at the Ford, they were able to look at it and go, wow, there's a market for these specialty kind of cars. And it took the guys inside Ford working with car enthusiasts to actually make it happen. But, without Ford, I don't think it would have been the same quality of car with the same engineering, because of what they were able to provide as a huge company. Correct? Right, Dave?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. It's mind-boggling to think. Really, honestly, it is. It was a group of people outside of Ford that came up with it, and then Ford blessed it, ultimately with the parts and the engineering testing, because it's well, Dave, I'd say this: we're going to do a whole podcast with Eber on the beginning to end on the SAAC cars. And I'm going to get that all put together because it's neat. I just really wanted Dave to talk about that red car, number 17. And it's so unique and rare. And I could, Mark, I don't know, see if maybe I could share my screen and you could see it. But I mean, this is, it's a very good example.
Oh, yeah.
Low mileage
on that one, do you know?
It's not a high mileage car at all.
That's a Mark II because it has the Ford seats in it that are embroidered.
Yes.
It's a convertible. So yeah, all the convertibles were Mark IIs.
Okay, they were. All right. The cool part is Dave remembers all the cars. We had a white car, a red car with white seats. And I called Dave and he knew exactly what car it was, who bought it, and everything else way back when. It was a car that was in Roger Rotus's collection.
Wow.
And I've still got pictures of it. I can't remember. I sold it to somebody, but neat car.
And actually, I looked this car up in the registry beforehand, and there's really not that much history on it. This one was sent out to our dealer in Portland, Dameron Ford. I guess they were a big Saleen dealer back in the day.
Yes.
And they sold the car new, and from there's really not a whole lot known about it.
Really?
It still looks brand new.
Yeah.
But the touches you're talking about, I mean, look right here. Look at the fog lamps. How you all made it black.
Yep. We made decals that went in, or stickers that went in there to kind of black out the opening. And the brake cooling dust, we were getting brake dust on the side of the car, so that they work, they're functional.
Yeah, they're definitely cool too. Very well made.
But let's see, try to get to the interior. Yeah, that's the.
Hey, look, the ashtray still closes.
It's a very low mileage car then. But
that one, we had an optional Kenwood stereo. That car doesn't have it, but yeah, actually Kenwood got involved with the program too, and they developed a sound system just for this car. They had a dedicated wiring harness, and they did a lot of engineering to put just even the sound system together for this car.
So that way everything's plug and play. Then there's and this with not necessarily, Saleen was not that way. They were wiring things in with metric connectors and that kind of stuff. So with Kenwood involved, then it made production more of a breeze than it sounds like.
Yeah, they had we just got all the parts from them. We had a plug and play wiring harness, so it was pretty slick. Different grills for the door panels, and actually different grills for the rear speakers too. And everything was different on it.
And it sounded good too. It actually really did sound great. The cars were really, really fun, neat cars, and did not really drive like a Mustang. The spring rates and also the Coney shocks. The car was really, really well put together.
It's neat to see them. And at 62 cars, I think Dave and I were kind of talking about this before we jumped online, but they're starting to get recognized. Even just 62 total production. That's both Mark I and Mark II. And David said that earlier.
Does that include snakes too?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
There's also a version, everything.
Right, called the SAAC Snake too.
Yeah. So to have 62 cars made when Ford builds 100,000 or more a year at the time. Some years, I think in the late 80s were above 200,000 Mustang units. For that to become, the SAAC name to become synonymous with performance in the Fox in certain crowds, it's pretty amazing, Dave.
I'm surprised anybody recognizes the car. Anytime I'm, have mine out somewhere and somebody recognizes what it is or knows what it is, it amazes me.
Or they recognize you since you were on the cover of the magazine driving the red convertible.
I had hair then, so I look a little different.
That's why it looks different. Yep. They can see you just the top of your head.
Exactly.
Yep. But it was neat. It was a family thing. Dave was directly involved in working with the guys doing all the publicity, and it was really, really hands-on. So there was a lot of of enthusiast and love and making sure everything was done the right way. And that's what was really, really cool about those cars. You didn't end up with people that got cars that were like, oh, well, it didn't have this, it didn't have that, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. That did not happen with the SAAC cars. You know, the people that got them were like, wow, this is a super well-built, well-engineered car.
Well, it sounds like it really is. And, you know, from the time, I guess, the day, you look at 40,000, that's twice as much as a loaded convertible.
Yeah.
And that was a big investment. A big investment for someone. So, and it looks like he's, you know, you mentioned earlier, it's like you kind of wanted to do, you know, Mark 1, Mark 2 is similar to the 65 Shelby's, and this, you know, what you're doing is 66 Shelby's as far as matching those things up. But you also kind of alluded to, you took the shortcomings of a Shelby at the time, you know, better sound system, obviously, better brakes, you know, all the modern things that you could throw at it to make the cars feel old with power, like the power that you would have from one of the old cars, but with the ergonomics and suspension upgrades you could get from, you know, modern technology.
Yeah. And even the interior, I mean, they never did anything with the interiors with the original Shelby's. They were just, you know, standard Ford.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, I think at this point, I'm going to say thanks, Dave, and tell everybody that we're going to have a long discussion after this, and to stay tuned to both my website, the YouTube channel, and social media outlets, Instagram and Facebook, for a release on a podcast with Dave, because I want to know about it. Oh.
And Dave's car too. Dave's got, you know, the most unique car of all of them, I think. So
I agree. Yeah, I want to talk about that because his actually still says Shelby on it in the badges. So there's a whole story behind that. So, but thanks for taking time, Dave. I really do appreciate you. I know you got a day job, and cars are not exactly what you do every single day anymore. And making time for us kind of in the middle of the day. I appreciate you. So
well, that's no problem at all. If you need any more info on that convertible, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Cool. Thanks, man.